I'm Author Function.
I'm Galvin.
And this is the Secret Boss Podcast, where we talk about the best auteurs in gaming, whether they deserve that title or not. And today we are talking about Lucas Pope, the man who wants gamers to get a job, because most of his games are about having a job and operating within the perspective of a laborer within a specific role, or at least that's my reading of what Pope tends to do in his games. What do you think, Galvin?
I think he hates unemployed people, and his entire career has been like a vengeful war against them. A gigantic passive-aggressive war against unemployed people.
So Pope creates a lot of games where you are playing within the perspective of someone in a regular job and usually trying to see, like, what would it mean to be working in this job and having to deal with what they deal with. And a lot of the game systems are reproductions or representations of what that job does. So one of his most popular games and most famous games is Papers, Please, which kind of took the indie world by storm when that came out in the early 2010s, where you are operating as a border guard and you are letting in and denying people who have their papers and documentation and those who don't have the correct documentation. And this became like a very famous like streamer game for some reason because it was so stark and dramatic and you can interact with it and self-express in a way where you're just doing this regular job, but it's also tense and dramatic, despite the fact that all you're doing is really looking at papers. And that's really something you can see throughout all of his games, basically, of making very simple ideas into dramatic situations and fun gameplay moments as well.
And it's not just Papers, Please. He also eventually moved on and did Return of the Obra Dinn, which is a kind of, I mean, it's a completely different type of game and a completely different type of menial job. But I think it also became relatively streamer friendly. It's this game where you find a magical pocket watch and you go on board basically this abandoned ship that returned years after it disappeared with some dead bodies on it. And this magical pocket watch allows you to go back in time and see these people's deaths. And all of this is being used for insurance adjudication, where you're an insurance evaluator and you need to figure out what all the damage has been done on the boat. But in order to do that, you have to figure out how everybody died. So it becomes a kind of detective game where you figure out how people died, and eventually it affects the kind of damage. Maybe that's a bad way of selling it. The insurance angle doesn't really come in until the very end, but all of this is just an excuse to be like, okay, you're doing menial work in a kind of fun way and you're exploring historical narrative through it. Would you say that's accurate?
No, just to be contrarian. Yes, yeah, that's basically accurate. There's also like a big focus on interfaces within his games. Pope did a lot of work on creating user interfaces and tools for video games, getting his start there instead of the more traditional designer route. Instead of like making these games, he would be making tools for making games, which is a pretty unique perspective to work in professionally. And you can see a lot of that within his games as well, because the interface is one of the most important games in all of his games, where the way that you interact with the game is sort of non-typical, and you have to be thinking about the way that the interface is being structured and what aspects you can interact with and what parts you can't. That's a sort of reading I'm going to have into this as we go forward.
So what can cause a man like Lucas Pope to have such a dedicated relationship to work, to have to struggle through so much toil, and him admitting it as fun to the player and forcing them to go through all this treachery in order to find it fun, and all this stuff with interfaces and stuff like that, just grueling stuff that people would hate, this man loves. What would cause him to do that? Well, he originally started as a Quake modder, so I think this would kind of explain a lot of it. So fresh out of college, he founded this company called Ratloop with his college friends, and together they made a mod called Malice, 23rd century modification for Quake, for the game Quake. He actually didn't work on the level design or like game design. He only really worked on skin mapping and like character textures. Although he did say he worked on some systems while some people were away, like some people were absent from that day of working. I don't really know what he worked on though. It was in the era where mods, if they were popular enough, were published as standalone games. And this is one of them. They managed to get it up there. And because of this, they started working for Activision. And that's where Pope would start working on his own, I guess, not connected to previous IP games is a good way to put it. Do you know about these, Offer?
No, I guess I don't. Tell me more about it.
All right. He started out with Gearhead Garage. And already, surprisingly, this is where you can start making auteur connections. Because Gearhead Garage was pitched by Lucas Pope himself as a game where you fix cars but you don't drive them. And he says that back then, when he was pitching this game initially, it was hard to sell people on the concept of a game where you only fix cars and you don't get to drive them at all. He thought
I
the
can
fixing
imagine.
cars was fun. Yeah. And he had to get everybody else in on the company in order to start making it. But it turned out to be an enormous success, actually. I mean, as a matter of fact, you look up Gearhead Garage on YouTube and you find people like gameplay footage, and all the comment sections are just like, I used to love this game as a kid. I really fell in love with this game as a kid. This meant a lot to me, stuff like that. But yeah, he led the concept for this game, I think. And then this was in 2000. And then immediately after that, also in 2000, he made another game with the same company, In the Line of Duty Firefighter, where you were playing as a firefighter. And well, I don't know. This one is more understandable as a video game, I think. Just like more immediately accessible as a game because, it's urgent. You fight fires, you're in a first-person mode, so it's like a first-person shooter. You're rescuing and bringing people out of buildings and stuff like that. I think it's very understandable. What do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting part to his history that I did not see in my research, so I'm glad that you found that.
And this all did so well that Activision started publishing their games in 2000. And then immediately after, something technically unfortunate, but in some ways fortunate for Lucas Pope happened. 9/11 happened in 2001. um, and this was... 9/11 happened while they were working on the Firefighter game, In the Line of Duty Firefighter. And after they released it, immediately after, Activision called them back and said, listen, we want you to make another Firefighter game, but this time we have the backing of the official New York City Police Department. And they're going to sponsor this game to make an officially New York City Fire Department sponsored 9/11 tribute firefighter game. And Lucas Pope makes it very clear in the one interview he mentions this, that he did not think this was a good idea. He thought it was a very tasteless idea. Everybody in the company disapproved of this idea. But they were like, sure, I mean, this might be able to make some money. Activision really wants us to do it, and we're just a bunch of indie developers. So why not? So they made F.D.N.Y. Firefighter, a game that I still cannot believe exists. The 2002 9/11 Firefighter game. I actually played this game. There's ISOs available for Gearhead Garage, as well as the first Firefighter game, but I couldn't get them to work. I did end up playing the F.D.N.Y. Firefighter 9/11 Tribute Firefighter game. And I honestly think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good, honestly. To the point where I'm adding it to my recommended section at the end of this episode.
What do you do in this game?
Okay, so it's half and half good, half bad. So the good part is that it's a first-person shooter where you basically are running around inside a burning building, and you're picking up civilians and escorting them out to exit zones in order to save them. But you can also pick up stuff within the building, like fire extinguishers or fire hoses, which are for some reason lying around in the building, and connect them to these water ports to help, spray down the fire. It's in some ways kind of a speed running game because you're encouraged to get these people and get out as fast as possible. But the fire is, of course, in the way. And if you're affected by too much fire, then you pass out and you have to basically restart the beginning. You're trying to mix in a way, trying to take out the fire so you can go through the areas to get to the civilians before the fires go back up again, and also trying to go as fast as possible. So it's like half speed running, half first-person shooter, but like a peaceful first-person shooter. Really interesting. Playing this game, I was really like, why aren't there more Firefighter games? I know there's like a decent amount, but I really think it should be like its own established genre by now because it was very entertaining.
Well, I think the problem with Firefighter games is how many people want to be playing a firefighter compared to how many want to be playing a cop, to be honest.
Okay. We'll get into this later. Lucas Pope here's another thread running through Lucas Pope's career is that he has like unconventional ideas for games, and he intentionally pursues these unconventional ideas, especially as an indie developer, because he says it's easier to compete with those unconventional ideas than to compete in like the mainstream market with all the conventional ideas. If he made just like a normal shooter, then he'd be competing with all the other normal shooters that are made by like hundreds of people. I do have to say, the first Firefighter game looks a lot less polished. It also looks a lot harder, which initially I was like, I should have played the first Firefighter game because it's like, I mean, the second Firefighter game is like really very, very easy, like extremely easy. Like the first Firefighter game has like a time limit of like 5 minutes to get everyone in and out of the building. The second Firefighter game has like a 20-minute time limit for each map.
Wow.
And I was like, why would you do that? And then I was like, oh, it's the 9/11 Firefighter game. It would probably be a bummer if it was really hard to rescue all the people in Firefighter. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine playing that game in 2002 and being like, oh, God, this game's so hard. So I get it. I get it.
I'm sorry, man. No matter what you do, so many of these people are going to die.
It's a tough
Sorry.
job.
That's what being a firefighter is. You gotta let some people die.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that being endorsed by like the official New York City firefighters. Oh
Yeah.
God.
But he does
That
some
is
really
interesting,
interesting.
the way that like real world politics will sort of interfere with these games in a
Oh
way
yeah.
where like it kind of limits your ability to make a more difficult or compelling or quote unquote realistic game. That is an interesting dynamic within this one specific situation.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they were part of like an extremely small indie team being held under by Activision. I'm sure they would have went
Yeah.
with whatever whims they were asking for anyways. I'm not going to get too much into this because I'm definitely not an expert, but you can really see his like texturing and mapping game just like really go well in this Firefighter game. I mean, he's always been a texturer and a scanner and like stuff like that, as well as a programmer. In this game, he does level design. He was the project lead, and he also does, I think, texture and stuff like that. But I was initially like, how am I going to compare this to like the other games besides just it being a menial job? The first level you pop into has you clean out a boat, like a boat that's on fire, and it's like a full boat that's like fully decked out and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. Then you go to another level, it's another even bigger boat. And I was like, okay, I can start to see the connections now. But yeah,
It's
I
like
just
Power
wanted to
Wash with a larger hose.
basically, yeah. There's this really impressive level where you're going into a cargo ship that's been turned upside down. You start the level and all the architecture is built for you, built not for you, upside down, and you kind of have to navigate it. You have to jump up into the ceiling in order to get through the door to get into other rooms and stuff like that. You have to navigate the upside down architecture to basically figure things out. And then halfway through the level, the boat rights itself up. So then you have to you continue to map, but the boat is now completely upside down again, and everything's familiar and everything's easier for you, but now you're completely lost because the rooms don't look exactly like how you remembered them. So you have to get back around. I think that's really fun. And you can see this is like him getting, I don't know, this is him really getting into like knowing how to design, I guess, space, I guess, or like knowing how to tell a story with space. So after that, I think he left the company Ratloop, although he's still friends with them. He would come back again and again to keep doing games for them. But he went and got hired at a bigger company in order to start working on like bigger games because he wanted to get into the games industry. He worked on a game called Remissions, which I didn't play, but I thought was very interesting. It's a shooter game designed for kids who are suffering from cancer, and it's a game connected to like chemotherapy masks, so that as you're playing the
What?
game, it would administer chemotherapy to them as they were playing the game.
What?
Yeah, this is a game that he worked on.
This is what you get when you look at only look at the games where they lead and not the ones where they work on it. Because I had no idea about this. What the hell?
Yeah,
That that is fascinating.
this was part of a developing company called Terminal Reality, I think, or either that or Real Time Associates, which was doing a lot of like empathy related video game stuff when it comes to like games for the medical profession, or like I think they did have like a CPR game at one point that taught people how to do CPR. And this game was in a way to address chemotherapy for children, because chemotherapy apparently, according to Lucas Pope in an interview as he was talking about the game, chemotherapy kind of hurt for some children as they were doing it, and you had to like encourage them to do it. So they made this video game which has a cancer-based plot. It has the main character fighting like the cancer cells with chemotherapy. That's the plot of the game. It's also educating the kids about why this chemotherapy is good for you, and why it's good for destroying the cancer cells while they're doing the chemotherapy. So it like encourage them to continue doing the chemotherapy on their own as they were playing the game. Really interesting. Didn't manage to play it. I couldn't find a copy of it. I would really love to see
Wow.
it.
It's like this 3D sci-fi first-person shooter with a mini-map and everything. That
Yes.
is fascinating.
I thought looking at the cover, I thought it was just like some generic Xbox sci-fi game, and then I read about it and I was like, wait, what? This is completely different from what I was expecting.
That's incredible. And like this was the mid 2000s where like the serious games movement was really interested in using video games to sort of enhance already existing industries and make people like more engaged with more regular day-to-day things. So it is interesting that he would bring up in this area of like normal stuff using games to elevate them.
Yeah. I would say maybe in some ways this kind of affects his future career. I've seen people argue Papers, Please as kind of an empathy game, in that it's kind of like arguing for empathizing with people and like trying to, like for a humanitarian cause or like a broader thing. People were pushing for that kind of thing. And I don't know. I don't know if Lucas Pope was doing that intentionally. I don't think he was, but maybe he considered that factor of like putting other people's stories within his games for Papers, Please through stuff like Remission, working for companies like that.
I have thoughts on Papers, Please, but we will get to that.
All right. Before we get to that, he decided to sell out like a sellout, total sellout, by joining Naughty Dog, the biggest company in the world. He joined in 2007, and he was working on Uncharted and Uncharted 2. I haven't played his games. Offer, I think, has. Is that right?
I have. And in a way, it is its own first-person shooter that is also a cancer. But don't put
Zing!
that in the episode.
I'm putting it in the episode. You can't.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like Uncharted, but this is when he started joining the AAA industry, and this is when he starts like working mainly on the user interfaces within the industry, working on just tools that worked in and assisted in the creation of the game. Nowhere near like a lead creatively, but it is like an important job and very important for his future career, it seems.
Yep. Apparently, he said he got a lot of freedom in doing this. In that, there was he suspects in an interview that he got the job because nobody else wanted to make the tools because there weren't that many people like applying for those jobs, and he was looking for like any kind of big job, so he got that, and he was able to design the tools as he saw fit, as long as it helped the developers. So he was really putting kind of he says he talks about it like he was having a lot of fun with it, basically, in that he got to do what he wanted as long as it meshed with other developers' interests. Another thing he talked about that he keeps mentioning in like nearly every interview I've ever heard him talk about is that his time working at Naughty Dog made him a lot better at learning to cut stuff and learning to get things to market. It taught him to care a lot less about things that didn't matter in the long run, as long as it got the game to the end product, basically. It gave him the rigor of a AAA game studio in being able to cut down things and focus his attention in parts of the game that really mattered. Also, he worked with a lot of other people here, and for the rest of his career, he worked as a solo dev. Very interesting. Not that I'm presuming anything from that, but it would be very funny if he was like, I hate people, and I don't want to work with them from now on, after working at Naughty Dog. In between Uncharted 1 and 2, he worked on a game called Mightier, which was a double project with his future wife, Keiko Pope, who he met while working on Remission together, the cancer game. They met while working at that company, so they stuck together, they made a few games of their own together, and they made Mightier, 2008, in between. Do you want to tell everyone about Mightier?
Yeah. First off, I want to talk about the title Mightier. This is such a weird title to me. Like, it's a comparative adjective, and the idea behind the title Mightier is that it's based on the pen is mightier than the sword. But did you get any of that when you heard the title Mightier? I can't imagine you did. But this is a really cool game that is interesting because you have to print out, or you don't have to, but the idea and the main technology gimmick is that these are puzzle games where you have to draw on a map to produce the platforms in the level. And you can do this by printing out the map of the level and then drawing on that map and then scanning it back into your printer, and it would process that and put it into the game. But it also allows you to use a mouse. So that is a lot of hassle to deal with. It's kind of more of a, hey, look at this thing that you can do that's kind of cool, and not something that people are actually going to be interacting with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a 3D platformer, and drawing on the map allows you to change the elevations of certain platforms, and it is surprisingly in-depth for something that kind of feels like it would be a tech demo. These are like really fully fledged puzzles, and it very quickly like ramps up. Starts you off with a few easy ones, and then like, oh my god, it gets so complicated. I wasn't able to finish this game, even though I imagine it's pretty short, because the puzzles just got too hard for me. But like, I was really surprised. It is both simple and easy to understand, and yet very difficult, which I think is like a really key thing to do in a puzzle game to make it work. But this is also where we start to see like his obsession with interfaces, because this aspect of drawing on the screen is like more than 50% of the game, even though there is like very typical 3D platforming within it. It's mostly looking at a screen where you're drawing on it, and there are like story justifications for why you're drawing on the screen. There's a lot of focus on the act of drawing, and it has lots of user interfaces to make that an enjoyable experience. So this is really like a big start to where this kind of design work would go. And also, I believe this is the only game that his wife Kaiko is a co-creator on, which I think is interesting because after this point, he's pretty happy being a solo dev. And when we're in this auteur's lens, you can kind of sort of glaze over co-creators in this kind of thing, and I don't want to do that. But I am interested to know what Kaiko has done to help with this game. But yeah, it is also like the start of a lot of Lucas Popeisms going forward.
Yeah. To be fair, Keiko would later work on Hellsing's Fire, but that's like a minor game, and she would also do like art for some of his future games, but like in minor places. So yeah, I want to bring something up. Do you think this game was meant to be used in classrooms? Because that's like I didn't get any evidence of this, but I was thinking about it for longer and longer, and I was like, well, with Remission, he was working with kids as a target audience, and in this way, with the whole printer thing. I feel like this could have been like a classroom activity type of game. I don't know what the intention was initially for this game, but I feel like it could be used to like teach kids like long-term planning in a way, because you kind of have to plan out how to draw these things and like before you get back to the game and stuff like that.
Like abstract thinking, basically. Like you could have that projected
Maybe,
onto
yeah.
like a wall and like have everyone work on that. That is interesting to think about. I think that like the difficulty there is that you'd have one person doing the actual jumping and stuff, and I don't know, that'd be kind of awkward to
Or
do in a
maybe
classroom environment.
like a computer lab where everyone's working on multiple computers and then they can bring their work to the printer and then scan it and then bring it back to their computer and stuff like that. So everyone works on their own. I
But
don't
then
know.
why not just use the mouse? I
Yeah,
don't know.
this is like a really cool concept when you describe it to people, but the problem is immediately destroyed when you find out that like each level takes like 30 seconds to draw off the mouse and then you go play the game and it's done. Yeah. I don't know. It's a game where it's a really cool idea. I don't know if the execution follows through, and that's true of a lot of experimental games in the 2010s or 2000s. But I think it's fun. I mean, it's still free. It's still there. You can still play it. I would recommend checking it out.
Yeah. And then after this, he would develop Hellsing's Fire again at Ratloop. This was a mobile game, iOS only. I have an Android, so I couldn't have played this.
Yep. I also
And
have an Android.
oh no, this is holes in our play area. So we have to do like Infinity. I was gonna say Infinity Gauntlet. What was that game? Whatever. Any of those big iOS games, you might have difficulty, but here we go.
Yeah.
Hellsing's Fire was another a kind of puzzle game where you had a fire and it would produce light, which would destroy enemies, and that would be blocked by different objects that would create shadows and would sort of protect the enemies, and you had to move that fire along so that you have the perfect amount of enemies destroyed, like a puzzle game. And it seems very simplistic, to be honest, and I didn't play this, so I can't really say for sure, but it seems like a very straightforward mobile puzzle game, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. It should be noted that this game seemed to get like pretty highly rated within the iOS market, but this is like 2010, so like a lot of games that were popping up and were like competently developed were doing that.
Yeah, this was the time when mobile games weren't trying to take all your money, and they were just like little small kind of arcadey style games where it's just like one very simple premise and it's sort of expanding based off that. And there'd be like little cute little experiences like little Angry Birds or Plants vs. Zombies instead of the hell market that the modern phones have today. So it is
It
nice
would
to see that.
be so sick if Lucas Pope came back to like the iOS market. It was like doing like Sudoku with like 10,000 ads on the screen and that he was like, this is my next game.
Could you imagine Papers, Please as a gotcha game where you have
That would
like
be good.
big titty anime women? You have to choose whether to let them in or not.
Yo.
This is a
Hey,
good idea.
you wanna make some money, Lucas? Boy, do we have the
We
ideas
have
for
an
you.
idea for you.
Be sure to put our name of the podcast in the credits, please. Should be noted that around this time, 2010, when he made Hellsing Fire, is the time that he quit Naughty Dog. So he wasn't fired from Naughty Dog. He quit by himself because he wanted to make it out on his own as a solo game developer or an indie game developer. So he was basically free from a job at this point, and just doing his own stuff. He made Hellsing Fire as a gambit with Ratloop, his original company, to try and get money. I don't know how much money he got, but hopefully it was enough. Eventually, yeah, this leads to the Republia Times, which he released for free for Ludum Dare. or Ludum Dare. I'm sorry, that's what it's actually pronounced as.
I've been pronouncing this as the Republica Times this whole time, and I did not realize there was no C.
It appears in 2 games, and you didn't realize this.
I did it.
Papers,
It
Please
never
is all
mattered to
about
me.
noticing details, and you didn't
Yeah,
notice
well,
this.
I didn't fucking do that, apparently.
You're probably such a shitty checkpoint officer, man. Sounds you.
I was. No shame in that. But the Republia Times, God, it's so weird to say that, not Republica, is a game where you are a newspaper editor and you have to choose which articles are going in the newspaper and which ones aren't, and how big of a headline they're going to get, how notices are going to be within each part. But the big thing in this game is that the government is looking over you, and they're an authoritarian government, and they're going like, hey, we want you to do pro-government articles, and if you don't do that, then we're going to kill your family. And at the same time, there is a rebel group that is like, oh, we can save your family if you put in negative articles about the government. And you sort of have to make choices based on that sort of systems-based both morality thing and sort of job simulation at the same time. Yeah, so this is when Lucas Pope starts making political games, but it's also a period of time where he has stated that he did not want to be very political. And that's very strange. We have a game about an authoritarian government who is censoring the media, and we have a creator who wants this to be a non-political game. And
He made a 9/11 game.
that is true.
The numbers don't lie, Lucas.
And like a lot of this makes sense. Like we were using a fake country, the Republia, which does not exist, and we're going to be like talking about this situation. That makes sense. That's a fine thing to do. And then also we were making a game about newspaper censorship, and the sort of processes behind this censorship don't really come into play. Like, what are the other things that this government believes? What events are being censored and which ones aren't? And what are the rebels? What do they believe? What what are they doing? That's not really concerned either. What are the sort of on the ground politics that are happening? What do the people believe in? And also, what are these events? Because you don't see like an objective view of the events in the Republic Times. You only see the sort of spin that the newspaper is giving it. So what is actually happening in reality? The fact that we are only seeing this through the lens of a newspaper editor in this one situation means that we have a sort of biased perspective towards kind of nothing. It is a non-ideological stance that is like purely for the self-interest of this player character in the editing perspective, and there is no real outside of that. And this is very neutral, I want to say. It's not like the thing about this is that I don't think it's saying anything good, but I don't think it's saying anything bad. I don't think it's very insightful about the way that censorship in the news works
Yes, I
because of
agree.
this lack of politics, to be honest.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I think follows through with a lot of his games. People call Papers, Please a political game. People call Republic Times a political game. It does have the themes of like, oh, it's dealing with politics. I don't think Lucas Pope actually cares about putting politics into his games. I mean, he said that on multiple occasions, but I don't think he cares
I mean,
about
I
like
think during
messaging.
this period, he doesn't do that. Like, he has made like retroactively, like recently this year, he's talked about like Papers, Please and like the importance of welcoming immigrants and things, especially regarding all the stuff that is happening in the current Trump administration in the USA. There are a lot more thoughts about immigration happening now than a sort of like centrist apolitical person would be able to try to do 13. But yeah, during this period, he's trying to be very apolitical, and I think that really you can really see that within his games.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, these games, they have political set dressing, but the set dressing is for the mechanics mainly. I mean, this is a game made in 48 hours with a specific theme given for the Ludum Dare, which is a competition where you make games in 48 hours. And I think Lucas Pope was like, okay, I want a game where you do a specific menial job. And and everything around it is basically the set dressing to allow that menial job to happen. Yeah,
Right.
because go for it.
Like, I think Lucas Pope is thinking about creating these systems of gameplay, focus on the user interface, and is really fascinated by the way that these interfaces can produce behaviors within players. And there is a lot to say about that on a broader political scale. And when you're making that kind of game and only doing it through that perspective, then you're only doing things through a immediate perspective, which is like interesting. And I'd like to see that going somewhere and making a statement about things, but it kind of doesn't, which can be, it's very frustrating too. Like, I don't think this is a bad thing. I don't think that there's any like ill intent in this. And I think it's a very reasonable perspective to do while you're going into the design of a game. But the product at the end, when you're focused on cutting out anything besides the core mechanic, and that core mechanic is like trying to say something about the world, and like the most that you can get from it is maybe like censorship bad, but also like kind of both siding it by saying, oh, the rebels in this scenario are
Yes.
also sort of like telling the news of what to do. So they're all kind of the same. It's kind of the perspective that you get from this if it's purely mediated through this interface. Because there are also no people in this game. You don't see what is actually happening in the real world. You don't know who are being affected by these policies. And again, this is a game jam game. I'm not criticizing the development, but criticizing the end product. And like it feels like this game doesn't believe in anything because there is nothing real outside of the newspaper. It's only the newspaper, and that's it.
Yeah. I would like to put a slightly more positive spin on what you're saying. And I agree, but I think can also be used to an advantage. Lucas Pope talks about like how he likes to leave space in his games for imagination. He doesn't want to put everything that he wants to put in a game. He leaves spaces in between for people to fill in the gaps because he thinks the reader's imaginations are more important. And I think when it comes to this game, I mean, not just because of time constraints, but I think this game also does help in not showing you real people. I think it would have been worse if it showed you real people, because this is a game about a person who has a family and is being forced by the government to censor stuff for the newspaper in order for his family to survive. And this person, as far as we can tell, doesn't believe in anything. So it's kind of, in some ways, it can be interpreted as a story about how people who don't believe in anything can be easily swayed by the government for like their immediate personal motivations to do things for them, regardless of what the politics are. How halfway through this game, the rebels start contacting you, and the second they say, okay, we can save your family if you start working for us, you can start making that pivot to the rebels. It's like none of the politics matter. It's only basically about whether or not they can promise safety for your family. It's a game about the median voter in a way. What it has to say about the rebels is not as good, definitely, but I think that's
Right.
interesting within those constraints.
I agree with that. I think that there is like a statement that is trying to be made here about this sort of how censorship like operates on some level, but I think that like the end result doesn't end up doing that for a large player base. Like you kind of have to be on the same page. You have to agree that like large authoritarian control over the newspaper is bad, and that maybe there is some skepticism towards a lot of rebellious groups in opposition to this, even though the government is doing something bad. And I think that is a sort of like reasonable perspective to have as you're producing the game. And like this is going to be procedural rhetoric from a designer's perspective. You're creating game mechanics that the way these systems work are supposed to be informing the meaning that you're getting out of it. This is something that became very popular in the 2000s in a lot of game design circles, following Ian Bogo's Persuasive Games, where he sort of makes this argument. And this has become like a sort of overarching way of analyzing games. Like if you talk about ludonarrative dissonance, this is going to sort of rely on the idea of procedural rhetoric, where like the mechanics mean something, despite the way that people will interact with them in various ways, that these core things that are the same throughout every playthrough, they will be producing meaning for the player. But like the other opposite perspective is that players are like kind of tricky to pin down. They will do weird things within your game. If you allow drawing within the game, people are going to make dicks. And that's just something you have to sort of deal with as a designer. So when you produce these games where you have the ability to like censor things, do pro-government things, if you are going into this game and you're like, yeah, I think that you should always do what the government wants and you always censor things because that's how you make sure that people are being kept in place, then you can do that. And the game isn't going to like push back on you in any way. And again, from a designer's perspective, I completely understand that, but it's also like it's not going to be saying anything. And I read so much on Papers, Please, which is a very similar thing. So many papers like trying to understand what this game is doing because it is so weirdly fascinating to me to make a political game where there's very little scripted content to sort of direct where where you're supposed to be understanding these parts. It is almost entirely gameplay mechanics in order to make you understand Lucas's perspective in this game. And I don't know how effective that is. Uh, and I'm definitely skeptical of it, but I'm not going to um, say that it's bad or unethical. I think that's going a bit too far. But I am skeptical of the effectiveness of these kinds of games.
I am also skeptical. We can get into that I mean, we're going to get into Papers, Please pretty soon. Just want to mention one last thing. I do think he's being like, this is like a deeply unserious game. This is not like a serious game. The Republia times. There's like multiple points where you're like getting different articles, and somehow the game revealed itself to take place in the modern day, because I thought it was like within like the 1900s or something. But then you see articles about like TV stars and like boy bands, which is so weird. And then
yes, like there are articles about the Kardashians. I think it's like exactly the Kardashian. Do you remember this? I can't. Okay, whatever. There are articles about a Kardashian analog. Like, oh wow, look at all these celebrities are doing. What's happening? And it just feels very like idiocracy to me. That perspective is like, oh wow, look at all these people focusing on dumb stuff.
Well,
in the news instead of real politics.
Part of me thinks that another part of it thinks he's just being silly. Like there's not even like a point to being made. Like the one I wanted to bring up was there are like extremely positive articles and extremely negative articles. One of the articles are like no food for orphans, and another one was like teachers are too dumb to get their own jobs. And it's like, I don't know, it's so over the top that it's like, I don't think this is pointing at any version of reality anyway. I don't know. Or I don't know. It could be, it's either really, really weak social commentary or it's just like not social commentary at all. Either way, probably not a good idea, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I think that Pope is doing a lot of like difficult work and like very experimental work on trying to do these things during a time where people were kind of trying to understand these concepts. It's just the end product I don't like. I don't like it.
Yeah. Luckily, you do love the end product of Papers, Please, a game that you have no problems with. Isn't that correct?
Well, yeah. Zero problems with Papers, Please.
Nothing problematic. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so Papers, Please, again, is a game where you are playing as a border guard, and you are sort of looking through paperwork and seeing if everything is good for these migrants to be coming into the country. And you have the ability to approve them and let them come in, or deny them and make sure that they stay the fuck out. And you have to be making sure that you're doing the correct things, because if you do the wrong things, then you lose, I believe, labor vouchers within this game. But I think basically it's money. You lose money if you do badly, and you gain money if you do well. And you also have a family in this game, and this family is depicted purely through the interface. You're not seeing or interacting with your wife or children, but you do have to pay for the expenses. You have to pay for rent, you have to pay for food, you have to pay for heating, and basically your family can die if you do badly within the section where you are a border guard and you are not correctly letting people in and out.
And also, you're living in the authoritarian communist government.
I don't think that they ever say it's communist specifically, but it is so heavily Soviet in its imagery, and they use the term labor vouchers, which very strongly imply communism.
And also, Lucas Pope says that in multiple interviews that he based the aesthetics of the game off of Cold War like propaganda that he saw when he was a kid in the 80s.
Right. Like, he said it's based on tropes he saw in the media and not on any like real politics, which I think is supposed to be sort of avoiding the idea that this is a political game.
And he says
which is very strange to me.
And he says in some interviews that he knows that the political propaganda he saw probably wasn't true. So he is trying to be like, I'm not like against, I'm not like I don't know if any of this is real. I just based it off of like these fake aesthetics, basically.
Yeah, I think that one of the frustrating things about this game is that it's sort of exoticizing the problems in this government, where it's like, oh yeah, these are Soviet things that are happening in this game, and there's a reason why this is said in the Soviet Union. Or this is true for any country which has borders and any country that is trying to restrict these borders, which is basically every single country in the modern era.
Yeah.
So it feels very strange to like present this as a Soviet thing, especially seeing it now during a time where there is very heavy abuses of power in the border crossing, especially in the US right now. But also, that would be true in 2012 when this game came out. This is something that's been true for decades. Yeah, any criticism that this game is producing towards like a sort of Soviet authoritarian government is true for the games that people are playing this in. So I don't know. It feels it's another frustration, which I can't say is like unethical or is a bad game or it's like problematic, but it is like what is being said in this game, and is that what you mean to say, and is that something that is important to say?
Yes. All right. So the game initially started with Pope observing actual border security checkpoints and like the stuff that guards would have to do. He says in interviews that he keeps out an eye for like what would be fun as a game to do in real life. Things that people hadn't thought of before, because again, he's not trying to compete with AAA markets. He's trying to make his original concepts to work in his indie market, to offer something that other games hadn't before. And he noticed that he was going home a lot back and forth from Japan to America, I think, because his wife, Keiko, is Japanese. And eventually he would fully migrate over there and live in Japan. But he talked a lot about how he kept seeing these security checkpoint cars and being like, that would be kind of an interesting job to do. So he picked a job like that. He made a setting. He was like, what would be an exotic setting that would be interesting to, let's just assume, an American audience? And then he picked, well, fascism, maybe a little too close. He probably didn't say that. But she was like, communism. Let's do communism, like Cold War communism. That's a thing that everybody can probably understand by seeing. I'm putting words in his mouth, but I'm guessing this is like something he was thinking. Like it's something that you can spot a mile away by looking at the aesthetics, but and kind of get a sense of. But also once you dig deeper into it, you're like, oh, this is fucked up stuff. And the main mechanics of the game are you processing these migrants and checking to see if they get in or get out. But what really I think drew people to this game was the personal anecdotes that sometimes came up while you were trying to process these people. Like sometimes they would give you their stories about how they're trying to run away from their abuser in their home country and trying to get to Ostoska. Other times there would be like a wanted poster with a person's face on it, and that person would show up and you could question them. All sorts of stuff. Do you want to cite any specific examples that jumped out to you that frustrate you?
Yeah, I think the like first major one is a husband and wife that are coming through. The husband has all his paperwork in order, but the wife doesn't. And the husband comes first and has you're gonna look at the husband and go like, okay, that's fine, we're gonna let him through. And then the real decision comes when the wife comes and she doesn't have everything. Are you going to let her through, or are you gonna follow the rules and kick her out? And when I played, I wanted to be like kind of an asshole to see what the game would do when I did it. So I was as selfish as possible and only made friends when they had something to offer me. And in this situation, I was like, you can't offer me anything, woman. You're not going to be bribing me or anything. So you're gone. I'm letting you go. You can leave. And if you do that, then she's like, okay. And then she leaves. And it's like, it's really not a big deal, but or like the way it's presented within the game, she doesn't feel like it's a very big deal. But if you're seeing this approach and like separating husband and wife from each other with this great big border between them, you might approach this like a thought experiment, like, okay, what moral obligations do I have? Should I let them through or not? And if you don't sort of process these ideas and you're not trying to do if you're not trying to do the moral thing here, not then you're not really going to be engaging with this scenario or mechanics. And if you decide to do the kind of shitty thing and not let her through, then the game is going to like still understand that. It's going to sort of validate that opinion. Like, okay, if you do what in my opinion is very much the shitty thing to do, then it's not going to push back on that. It's not going to like show any of the suffering that this wife is going to be going through. There aren't going to be other characters that are like saying like, oh man, you did a really shitty thing right there. It's not going to make you feel bad about what you've decided at nearly any given point in my experience. I watched PewDiePie's Let's Play of this game. This was a very popular sort of streamer game. I guess not streamer, a very popular Let's Play game when it came out. And people are still making Let's Plays to this day. And PewDiePie, who has a lot of very controversial
Famously normal man.
Famously normal man. famously for saying the N word and saying it was the gamer word. Famous for putting death to all Jews in one of his videos, and famous for having a minstrel statue within his house. All of those things. He was very joyous about the idea of kicking this woman away from her husband. He was like, yeah, get her out, very excitedly. And again, the game didn't really push back on that. It's like, okay, you're following the rules, you're doing what the government wants you to do, and there isn't going to be this opportunity where you're being shamed for what you're doing. And if you're on board with that, you can say like, yeah, this is accurate. This is depicting a culture where this is normalized, and it's also sort of depicting the realism of not having to deal with these issues if you're a border guard. And when people are actually interacting with this game, there could be wildly divergent perspectives on that action, and very joyously do a fascism when you're very happily like stripping rights away from people. So I saw this in a few different Let's Plays. So there's this aspect to the game where you might find a person whose image does not perfectly adhere to the sex or gender that is in their passport, and you can go like, okay, I've noticed that there's a discrepancy here, and if you do that, then you basically strip them down and you see the nudity and you see all their clothes off, and you check their genitals and see if that matches up to their passport. And the in-universe government is like, if this happens, you need to be restricting the passports to a person's genitals. And this intersects with a lot of different sort of genderqueer people, trans people, intersex people, non-binary people. It is recreating a lot of these systems and experiences where these people are being disrespected through government services, and it's asking you how you want to approach that. You can deny them, or you can let them in, and either way, it's not commenting on that aspect afterward. It is
Right.
only in the situation, the thought experiment, and then afterward, they'll just be like, if you don't let them in, they'll be like, oh, okay, that's a bummer, and then they'll leave, and then, and then it's kind of at the end of it. So you have to be like on board with the idea that transphobia is bad in order for this to be like a fulfilling, interesting experience. Because if you're not on board of that, and there are a lot of people out there who think that if you see a trans person and they're quote unquote lying about their gender on their documents, then you should be allowed to lock them up. And if you have that perspective and you decide like, hell yeah, I get to do this within this game, and there's not going to be any pushback for that, and it's going to be rewarding you within the game, and you're not going to be seeing any kind of suffering outside of that, or seeing sort of difficulties that can emerge on the outside, then it's like sort of fulfilling. The game is like rewarding you with money for when you put someone gender nonconforming in jail. And again, this is quote unquote realistic, but in the way that it is simulated, it's not sort of saying anything about that realism. It's
Right.
sort of letting you do what you want and approaching the situation in the way you want for this difficult, realistic situation that hurts people.
The
And
game
like,
is like designed in a way that doesn't let you change, that doesn't really make people change their mind. If you go in with one
yeah.
opinion, then you're likely to come out with the same opinion.
Yeah. Like I played the game again as selfishly as I could, and I got what I think is considered like the best ending, where your whole family is alive and you like get to leave the country. And like I was expecting there to be sort of like some kind of indication at the end of like thinking about all the people that I've screwed over. Like in Metal Gear Solid 3, there's a very famous part where all the people that have died within your game sort of come back, and you see all the corpses of all the people that you killed. And I was kind of like thinking that because this is such a highly acclaimed game about the border, like it would do something similar. It would show you like the effects of what you've done. And it just kind of doesn't do that. It is stays within the limited perspective of the protagonist and doesn't move outside of that limited perspective.
Yep.
And God,
You're
review
so
it back.
pissed off. I can tell you. I can tell you're so pissed off about
I am
this.
so pissed off. The first thing I thought about within this, it was like, okay, what if we had a Schindler's List game where you only view the world through Oscar Schindler's eyes, and you don't see any of the events outside of that, where you're only staying within the factory and choosing who stays and who dies. And like the power of something like I'm not a big fan of the movie Schindler's List. I think for unrelated reasons, but there's a lot of power in Spielberg's sentimentality. He wants to show the suffering of the people. And this is a very common idea between like lots of genocide fiction where like, okay, we need to show the effects of this violence. And that's not perfect. If you're going into this thinking that genocide is good, it's not going to change your mind unless like you're very emotionally affected by these things. But it is very effective to show like the scripted format of people reacting to things. Like, what effects does this have on people? And this game sort of denies that. So with my Schindler's List counterexample, like you would never see any of the horrible things that are happening within that movie if you just stay within Schindler's perspective at the factory. And this is like kind of doing the same thing within that mediated perspective. And like, again, I can't say that like there's bad intention going into that, but it is creating an end product which isn't saying anything good.
I would argue that like his entire style when it comes to Lucas Pope is what doing this or like brings up all the problems you have with it from the start. I feel like if you track his games, especially the games that he has more input in, there's a lot of like distancing from the actual thing. Obra Dinn, which we'll get to later, has all the deaths happen in still motion, not in motion. With the characters, you never see the characters speaking, like watch them speaking. There's no animation. It's just their death. And any like empathy you can get from outside of death is just completely excluded. Same here with Papers, Please. You never get to see what the character is thinking internally. He always keeps that kind of distance. And part of that is because he wants you to make up your own mind. But because he wants you to make up your own mind, you also usually come out with the opinion you have going in the first place. You know, Republia Times, they don't tell you what your character's feeling at all. When it comes to Papers, Please, they give you, they do the same thing between Papers, Please and Republia Times, where they only give you a sentence description for how your family is doing at the end of every day, which is something he said was very intentional to kind of keep you a distance from how your family was doing. If you look at the original devlogs, there are a lot of people talking about how there are a lot of people suggesting, because when he was making the demo, including cutscenes or like visual novel segments where you would talk to your family and they would talk to you after you get home every day from work. And he deliberately rejected that, said no, because I want that distance. And yeah, that leads into all kinds of stuff that's coming, that brings up for you.
Yeah. And I want to compliment Sandwich here. I think that this also has a lot of advantages. One, it feels a lot more powerful if you're on the same page, as I was saying. But two, I saw like a lot of different papers that are talking about this, and I found it like a very fascinating perspective that this systems-based design of thought experiments and within this gameplay of this system, it means that it can do something that other mediums have a lot of difficulty doing, because a lot of other mediums in their like set scripted examples, they are present these moral thought experiments in like very yes or no directions. Whereas within this game, you can fail, you can screw up, and like it's a very understandable thing if you screw up within this game because the gameplay can be difficult at times. And it sort of shows like the moral implications and the difficulty of making moral choices within a time limit, which is something that you couldn't really do with that sort of distancing effect. And it also allows you to be like not really holding yourself really, I don't want to say accountable. It's not like blaming yourself or making you feel guilty if you fail what you might think is the moral thing to do. If you screw up, like very famous philosophy idea, ought implies can. And if you like can't do something, then you don't really have a moral obligation to something that like you don't have the physical ability to do. Like I can imagine someone who has like a sort of either mental or physical disability trying to play this game, and they do the wrong thing. They do like something immoral that they didn't intend to do. Then I can very like see a good argument like there shouldn't be any blame for that person, and the game shouldn't be trying to guilt you for that. And I think that is an interesting perspective to have inside a game that is unique compared to other mediums.
I would also like to bring up, I think I like this game more than you do, Offer, but I want to bring up something from my perspective, which is I feel like this is a personal thing, so I don't know if this applies to everyone, but I think there is a kind of effect this game has on you, and you're like, when you do something wrong or like morally wrong, and you're like, why am I not being punished for this? Like why is God not or Lucas Pope or whatever not punishing me for doing this horrible thing? And I feel
God,
like
also known as Lucas Pope.
Yeah, true. Pope is in his name. What do you think that's for? You know?
What Lucas Pope says is God's message.
Yeah.
So
you didn't
true.
get this from his games at all. But Yeah, I think this kind of relates in a way to immigrants who had to do like horrible things and had to like live for the rest of their lives having done horrible things and being like there's no acknowledgement for it because you did it alone by yourself. There was nobody there to witness you but yourself within that room doing that thing. And it's like looking back on something like a gigantic historical event that affected so many people, looking back on it as a person later, although it's not appearing on screen in this game, I feel like you can look back on it and be like, was it worth it? I don't know. I feel like even in the happy endings of this game, I can't imagine the main character getting away without, I don't know, something plaguing their conscience. Although that might just be me projecting my feelings onto it. Again, it's kind of like a Rorschach test, for better or for worse. A lot of the times for worse. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
maybe
agree
I'm
with your
just a
criticism.
heartless bastard and I can just go through this game without feeling bad.
I mean, I think this goes back to the thing we were talking about during the Victor Heisper's episode, where I was talking about the Baron, where I was like, the moral choice matters, even if you're not being like, even if the game's not responding to you for it. I feel like the same thing applies to Papers, Please, where like the moral choice is you making the choice in the first place. The fact that you did that basically reflects something about you, and the way you react to it is something that you're supposed to reflect on. It's not the game, you're not supposed to be like waiting for the game to respond to you for that. But that works for some people and that doesn't work for other people. I don't know. I think what you
Yeah.
say is pretty valid, honestly.
Yeah, I will say that part of my bias here is that I have learned that I have a much harder time caring about fictional characters than a lot of other people. If they die horribly, then I won't feel bad.
And you play this game extremely selfishly, and as we all know, the way you play games reflects who you are as a person deep
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
So, you're the worst one. You're the worst one here. You're going to hell. I'm going to heaven.
See, the problem with this game is that I couldn't be as awful as I am in real life within it. Like
They,
I would fuck over so many more people, but they wouldn't let me. I would kill my family. They won't let me kill my family on purpose. It's frustrating.
they should have allowed you to take the key and unlock the gun and shoot the person in the booth, like right there.
Exactly. That's what I do. All right.
And last thing, I do think this is very funny. This will not help the case at all. At one point in an interview, Lucas Pope was talking about how he was doing politics during Papers, Please, and he was like, I wasn't really trying to be political. And he says the only political thing he wanted people to take away from Papers, Please is, and I quote, that border stuff is really complicated. Next game.
Uh, next game. Let's talk about some of his game jam games.
Yeah.
We haven't really gone into. We talked about the Republia times. I would fail so badly at Papers, Please. And there are a lot of other Ludum Dare games that he made. In 2012, he made 6 Degrees of Sabotage, which is a game where you are a sort of criminal investigator. I don't really know what the role you're playing is, but you're looking at these randomized characters and it's telling you, okay, this is a criminal conspiracy and this person is carrying a note to this person. And you have to like sort of observe who those people are talking to and where in the line that this note was passed down and sort of figure out who did it. And this is kind of like set up as a mystery game, but it ends up being like a really basic logic puzzle. I did a lot of similar things when I was in elementary school, where it was like logically deducing who could and couldn't be in the same tree, I guess. I honestly don't have a ton of thoughts on this one, other than the fact that it's another sort of profession game, I guess.
Yeah, me neither. Besides just like a brief anecdote that when I was like 13 or 14, I heard about Papers, Please, and then I decided to play his other games. I played 6 Degrees of Sabotage, and it made my head
Really?
hurt so bad that I stopped playing it. Fuck you, Lucas. Okay, next game.
Wait, what hurt?
My head hurt from playing the game. I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Skill
Was too-
issue, oh my god.
I was too stupid for it. Yeah. I guess another thing I should also mention around this time is that he does a lot of procedural generation. Lucas Pope, he's interested in that. He made a procedural generation to generate the faces randomly for Papers, Please, all the immigrants that would walk in, and all the different features and stuff like that. And he does something similar for 6 Degrees of Sabotage and later games that we'll get to later. Yeah. Next up, The Sea Has No Claim. I don't have much to say about this either. This is also made for Ludum Dare. It's like another Eastern European vaguely themed kind of game where you're trying to find submarines or like people drowning, I think, in a sinking ship, and you're placing radars, like a limited amount of radars, to triangulate the position of those people. And that's it.
I don't see the Soviet angle here, but yeah, this is another puzzle game. I think that what's interesting is that Lucas Pope seems to be very interested in puzzles, which isn't really shown through Papers, Please or Return to the Obra Dinn, his more famous games. Like,
What?
very interested.
Yes, it is.
I
They're
mean,
both puzzle games.
you consider Papers, Please a puzzle game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of. I mean, the empathy takes up a lot part of it, but like the mechanics are based on deducing, like figuring out all these kinds of like discrepancies and stuff like that.
Okay. But I think the thing that makes Return of the Obra Dinn interesting is that it's not a deduction game, it's an induction game.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Fancy Pants. Jesus. Didn't realize you got 2 PhDs over here in grammar.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, anyway, we'll get to Return of the Obra Dinn, but maybe I'm off the mark on this, but I feel like these games are more set up as like more traditional puzzles. I mean, where you have like these sort of pieces and you're sort of trying to piece them together in the correct way to create a very yes or no situation. Maybe I'm off the mark there. But anyway, C has no claim. There are a lot of different items and different methods to be searching in this area. And it is a very in-depth puzzle game. And again, it's one that goes surprisingly deep for such a short game. And I think it's very well designed. And I don't have more to say. It is another game that is very focused on the interface. It is very focused on the way that it is a little bit dehumanizing to be putting your effort into a very tense situation while being detached by a mediated experience where you're more focused on the systems that are in place instead of caring about the sort of people who are being affected and the work that's being put into this. That is the strongest read I can put into the Sea Has No Claim.
Yeah. I would say, I feel like I haven't brought this up enough. People might get the impression that Lucas Pope's games are really serious. I feel like he has a lot of dark humor throughout all of his games, including like Papers, Please. In some ways, I mean, if you're going to read it really, really poorly, like in very bad faith, you could say that Papers, Please is one big dark joke about an American laughing at like, oh, how awful, stuff was in the Eastern European times under communism. But the Sea Has No Claim has a really funny joke that I always like, where there's like an item you place to decide the final place of where everyone is. And when you place it, there's like a long pause, and then the game finally reveals to you what happens. So when you're first playing the game and you don't really know what's going on, you put down the item, there's a long pause, and then it cuts to a screen that's like, oh yeah, everybody died. You fucked it up. Everybody is dead on board. I thought that was just such a good bit of timing and I don't know, jokiness. Yeah.
I didn't get that joke because I did every level good. No.
Wow.
No, I mean, I did legitimately have no situations where nobody died.
Really?
So I was like, oh, okay,
Wow.
you got some people, but you didn't get other ones. So that is an interesting perspective on the jokes there.
I failed the first level like 5 times, so I think I'm just worse at
What?
than you.
Okay.
Maybe my
I'm
brain's
judging you a
stupid.
little
I don't
bit.
know. Maybe my brain's stupid. I don't know.
No, not stupid. Anyway, next one is Unsolicited. Unsolicited, a game that I have strong opinions about for not having any opinions about. I think I interacted with this game in the wrong way. Like, I read more about it further. But the way I saw this game and the way I interacted with it is that this is a game about filling out letters and forms and sending them out. And basically all that you're doing within this game is interfacing with the form and filling things in and then having them shipped out. And you have to have the correct information in these forms to make sure that everything's matching, a little bit like Papers, Please. And you're creating lots of different spam letters in people's mailboxes. And I played this for about 10 minutes. I got like 6 or so levels in. I was like, is this the whole game? Is all I'm doing just filling out this paperwork? Like, is this going to change? Is this like an infinite roguelike game where I won't know if I beat the game or not? It's like, I feel like I've gotten far enough where it would have escalated at some point. So I just stopped playing because I thought it was just a data entry game and I couldn't imagine having to do more.
Really? Wait,
Yeah.
what level did you end on? What were you doing in the last level you played?
I mean, I had like 8 or so different files and forms I was filling out, and like I just had like a huge workload coming in. So I kind of understood the game to be both a commentary on how big and annoying the spam letters are, and also a game about like how these workers are being forced to do more work than they can handle, because I was only like doing maybe a tenth of the letters that were assigned to me at that point. And I was like, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just kind of failing at this now, which is kind of a bummer. But
Okay.
yeah, apparently there's a lot more to this game. So you tell me your experience, Cal.
Yes, I have a very different read on this game because unlike you, I actually beat the whole thing.
Yep.
I'm not a quitter like you. Yeah. So this was made for Ludum Dare, also 48 hours. Same thing with Sea Has No Claim, by the way. But the theme for this one that stuck out to me specifically was the theme was "You are the monster," which is interesting. in regards to this game. In this game, you're filling out mail forms basically, and basically all the forms you're filling out have like the names and addresses of people, and you're like, this name, this address, you could be entitled to like $1,000 if you fill out the sweepstakes form. And other stuff is like timeshares, and other stuff is like debt collection. So it's like really, really awful businesses that you're dealing for in the 1920s for some reason. And then after you finish the first 6 or 7 levels or so, there's like interstitials between every day that's like, good work, you're doing a good job, the company loves you. At some point, after the 6th or 7th level, they're like, this new, I'm going to spoil the whole game, by the way. Are you ready? It takes like 30 minutes to play, but like, I'm going to spoil the whole game. So sorry, here we go. After the 6th or 7th level, you finish, the company comes back to you and goes, this just in, the war has started and all the mail is blocked. There's no more mail to do. You can quit the game. You can quit playing. You don't have to do any more. And there's a button that says, I will quit. And there's a button that will say that I will continue working. If you click I will quit, it boosts you back to the title screen and you have to start all the way from the beginning. Or that's where you stop playing. If you click continue, you go on to a new day where there's no mail being sent in because there's nothing to be done and you're just waiting there. So you just wait out the entire timer while nobody does anything. Another day comes, you're still waiting. There's nothing coming in. And then they say the mail has been opened again. You need to start filling out forms again. You go into the mail form. Every form you're filling out is a killed in action form for a soldier. You get a form that says this soldier was killed in action at this point. They died of this cause. This needs to be sent to this family. And you're just filling out the names and all the same mechanics, stuff like that, but for people who died in the war. And you basically continue doing that for like a few more days. And then after that, the game loops and says, okay, mail is back open. You can go back to your original job. To me, this is weird. This is like an interesting commentary. This might be the most commentary he's ever done politically. This is the most I've ever gotten politically out of one of his games because it's like the theme is you are the monster, which is easy starting out. You're doing timeshares and stuff like that. But it's a game that quickly turns around that idea to being like, oh, now you're some kind of hero, or you're doing like menial work that affects people in a good way. You're basically doing the same thing. You're filling out names and addresses and stuff like that, but you're doing it to let families know and empathize with people, basically. Update people on this horrible war that's probably shaking the country. And then when all of that's over and the war is over, the game's like, okay, you can go back to doing all this horrible stuff for all these timeshares and sweepstakes and stuff like that. So it's like your character is not even like doing this for be a horrible person or to fill out killed in action forms. It just characterizes your main character, who doesn't speak at all, as this kind of person who just likes filling out paperwork. So it's kind of like a critique of people who don't, in a way, have any political agenda, just like filling out stuff. You know, kind of like Lucas Pope, who's making this game to embrace the idea of filling out paperwork, but not really for like any kind of political agenda. So to me, it's kind of like an auto critique. I don't know. Maybe I'm going overboard with my interpretation of this, but I feel like it's pushing back on the idea that's like, you're just doing paperwork, but like you understand that there's a context around this whole thing, right? That there's like things this actually affects outside of just like the menial job of you doing what you like to do, which is, I guess, organizing things. I don't know. Do you see anything in that?
Is this like something the player character is choosing to do in universe, or is it my read was that this was like a laborer at a job, just like doing shit they don't care about.
Well,
But
to be clear, halfway through the game, they give you multiple options. They ask you like 4 or 5 times if you want to quit the game because you no longer need this job. And they're like, everybody else in the
okay.
office has left. You don't need to continue doing this job anymore.
Oh,
You're going to be fine. And you can click, I will quit, and that kicks you back to the title screen, or you can continue playing. So it's like, what the fuck are you playing for, basically, other than the paperwork?
that is interesting, especially like seeing Pope as someone who like likes interfacing with these games and like kind of likes these ideas of filling things out and like playing these game like finds joy in these sort of basic operations, I
Right.
guess. Interesting.
And I guess I feel like he kind of continues this idea with like, you're doing a job, but there's like a whole kind of empathy around that job, which with, I don't know, is this his most empathetic game? Return of the Obra Dinn? It might be. I don't know.
I think Return of the Obra Dinn is the one with the most story and the most scripted sequences, and therefore the most character. I guess like it is to an extent.
But kind of by default, right?
Yeah, I mean, empathy game is like kind of a vague term, but if that is like the most powerful way of producing emotions in the viewer is like interacting with characters who having strong emotions, then I would say that this is by far the most within his gamography. Anyway, do you want
Thinking
to explain?
I'm talking more about distance, kind of, because he does that distancing effect with Papers, Please and Republia Times. I feel like this is the least distance of his games, I think, when it
Right.
comes to between you and the characters.
Yeah, there is technically in-universe mediation, but it's like you're seeing you're using media in order to see like the truth of a situation that you otherwise wouldn't, which is interesting. It's like the opposite of a distancing effect. Is like you are using these objects in order to see what is really happening, which is I think a pretty thematic twist based on these other
Right.
games. But yeah, you explain what it's about. I
Yes,
don't want
I
to.
love this game. I love this game, by the way. This is like one of my favorite games of all time.
I love
Return
this
of the
game
Obra
too.
Return of the Obra Dinn is a story that takes place in the 1800s, I think. It's like you're like European, basically. A boat called the Obra Dinn, which once left for, I think, trading, left and disappeared years ago. Suddenly it comes back into port and it's empty, except there are a couple skeletons on the floor. And you, as the insurance adjuster, have to go in and figure out what the damages are. But as you come in, there is a chest that's being handed to you while you're going on board. That's from one of the ship's survivors, Henry Evans. And he wants you to figure out how everybody died on board. And he gives you a book with everybody's names and a little slot to fill in their causes of death and everything like that. And a magical pocket watch, which when you stand over a dead body in the ship, it allows you to go back in time to the exact moment they died. And through this, you figure out how everybody died on board and more bodies are revealed. And you basically figure out bit by bit the story of the most unfortunate ship of all time, basically. The unluckiest people in Europe. That is saying something because they're all in Europe. Again, he does the distancing effect in this game. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the weird kind of like retro fascination he has, like a lot of indie developers had, that he has a weird fascination with retro tech, Lucas Pope. And this one comes in the full play because he originally made this game because he wanted to make a Macintosh style 1-bit game, which is all black and white monochrome. And that kind of game used dithering back then. And this game is 1-bit entirely, and you can switch between color palettes of like Microsoft DOS and like Macintosh and like LCD screens. It's so weird because it's like an 1800s game, but also there's like tech related to it for some reason. But
And it's
anyways, this
also
game,
a 3D game. Like there are 3D
oh
environments.
yeah,
And even though like you can very clearly understand this 3D space, even though there's all this like dithering happening, all these dots that are making up the space, which is fascinating.
yeah. It's so strange. Yeah, the distancing effect is created by this whole art style, which is like you can barely see some people's faces. I mean, he added a whole feature where you zoom into people's faces and they tell you which people they are. That's how kind of obscure these people's faces are sometimes. And also that these deaths are held in still motion. I mean, this is obviously for cost cutting measure. He didn't want to animate these scenes, but also it's like you don't get the every scene you zoom into when it comes to a person's death, you often hear like the few seconds up to their person's death done by an incredibly well made like sound production, like a radio play of what happened before the person's death with all these voice actors. And then the moment of death that it cuts into, and it's just a still kind of God, what's a good idea? I want to say mannequin challenge, but I don't think anybody understands what that is now.
What? No, I don't.
Okay, you don't even get what that is. Okay, it's a freeze frame basically that you can walk around in 3D, and you can look at everybody from different angles, and you can spot some secrets if you look at some different parts of outside. But the point is that you don't get to see these people in motion. You can see their faces, and you could probably match some voices to some faces if you pay attention closely enough. But you never get to see these people in action outside of when they die, or all these people around these people when they die, which is usually in horrible moments of crisis. So you never get the sense of like what it was like to be normally on board. It's only just like basically the highlight reel of deaths that they all go through. It's like going through the kill count of a movie, basically. You know those kill count videos? It's like that, but you never get to see the rest of the movie.
I mean, there are like, more slice of life segments, like people dying of sickness or people dying from an accident or something, where you see that moment of death, and like everyone else just like kind of hanging out, looking at cars and stuff. But it is largely like mostly focused on death.
There is no merry moments, let's just say. There were not there.
Yeah.
Let's just say in the book, there's a sketch of people dancing on board, and you never see any of that in the game. None of that appears in the game. Yeah, I mean, this is where the dark humor thing comes in. I think Lucas finds a lot of joy in like disendoweling these people. There's some really gnarly sound design and just like really beautiful scenes, I guess. I don't really know how else to describe it other than like painterly. Like it's like a painting in some ways of how all these people are stanced in different poses. I don't know enough about Renaissance painting to make a comparison, but that's how I felt about it. These grand, like epic sea accidents, I guess.
This game has such strong imagery in each of these freeze frames that it is really powerful to be able to like explore this area, and basically anywhere you look it's going to be interesting and kind of beautiful in a way, in their deaths. And the cool thing in this game is, I don't think we talked about what we're trying to do, but you're basically trying to figure out who these people are, how they died, and who or what killed them. And the system in this game is that you basically have a drop down menu for each of those things. Like, okay, who is this person? Let's do a drop down menu of all the people on the ship. How did they die? Let's have a drop down menu of basically every possible way you can be killed. And then who killed them? Let's have another drop down menu of all the characters in the game. And this gives like a whole lot of different ways to approach the problem of figuring out who these people are and how they died, because this is a mystery game. And the way that most mystery games operated before Obra Dinn came out is that they are using deductive reasoning. They're seeing like, okay, what is the evidence and what is going to prove that this person is the bad guy or whatever. You see this in Ace Attorney, you see this in Danganronpa. What's the third one that comes to mind that doesn't make me seem like a fucking weeb? Can't think of any. Those are the only two mystery games. Anyway,
well, you're doomed to weeb hell forever.
Yep, I am. But yeah, basically, most mystery games up to this point were largely focused on like either having a very straightforward tree in order to produce like the thought and logic systems of like, okay, this is the person who did it. And other games, they wouldn't have these systems. They're either like visual novels or FMV games. Her Story comes to mind, where you're just like searching for things and like you sort of learn the mystery yourself. But the game itself isn't like checking to see if you understand the mystery. It's not checking to see like if you solved it before the game kind of narrativises it for you. Whereas with Return of the Obra Dinn, kind of like revolutionary thing with this game was that the game was like telling you if you're right or not when you know, um, or when you have created a hypothesis of who these people are and how they died, and it will like sort of respond to your theories in a way that a lot of other games just weren't doing at the time. And like I was saying before, this is using a lot of inductive reasoning instead of deductive reasoning. It's not telling you like, okay, these are the pieces of evidence, really study them and really drill them down and logic your way into figuring out the one and only solution for this puzzle. Whereas this game is using inductive reasoning. It's showing you like all of these spaces and telling you, okay, what is important in this scene? What can you get from the scene that will sort of inform your idea of these characters? And some of these can be like pretty simple, like, okay, that guy has the big captain's hat. That guy's probably the captain. Let's put them in here. Or they can range to more like tricky or abstract things like, hey, this guy has very specific socks, and I'm noticing that these socks are being placed in this hammock. So I can pretty reasonably deduce that this guy is this character who has that number, and you can even go like even further. You can do some racial profiling in this game. There are these like kind of stereotypes for these characters that you can like adhere to or not, and like think like, okay, this is going to be true for this character because of these general assumptions I have about the world. And a lot of times this is true, and a lot of times it's not. The right there was like racial profiling and stereotyping, but if you do that for all the characters, it's not going to work very well, because there are like some divergent areas where it doesn't feel, I don't know, like very stereotypical in ways. Anyway,
it does feel very icky when it works, though. It does feel very icky. I love the devlog for this game where I didn't read the whole devlog, but when he first announced his Return of the Obra Dinn to the forum that he's making, he's like, I'm making a new game called Return of the Obra Dinn, and unlike Papers, Please, there's not going to be any political overtones.
What?
I'm not kidding. That's what it says in the devlog.
Oh my God. So he says unlike Papers, like he was saying when Papers, Please was released that this is not a political game. Saying like, okay, I've learned that this game I was trying to be apolitical, but it ended up being political. But this one's not political at all.
Exactly. You get
Ah!
it.
Oh my god. Okay. Give your thoughts on that because I need to recover.
This is just me jump scaring you with information hazards the entire episode. Yeah, I don't like the racial profiling in this game, to be clear.
Yeah.
I did see a YouTube comment on one of the videos that was like, I felt really bad having to racially profile people, but it was messed up to me that it worked. And then somebody replied to that and was like, it's almost like it's the whole point of the game. And I'm like, yeah, man. He made Return of the Obra Dinn for 5 years. He made this game to talk about how cool racially profiling people is. Investigations. Yeah, good idea. No, I don't think that's what he did this game for. But again, like a lot of pulp games that we've covered before, good intentions, maybe bad effects. But yeah, I love the way this game does detective work. I like detective games. I like deducing stuff. And I love the, I guess, lack of hand-holding this game has. And basically, there's no point where the character ever goes, where your character ever speaks and goes, maybe I should look in that area again. You can basically just be stuck wandering around in this gigantic sea of information forever, unless you actually sit yourself down and go like, okay, I need to focus on this, or I need to focus on that. And that really makes you feel like you're doing your own stuff. I think that's wonderful. And I think there is a more of an interesting empathetic message behind this game than his other games, in that in what's being filled out here in the first place. This entire game is happening because the survivor of the ship is giving you this book to fill out. It's solely for personal reasons. He wants to fill it out so he can feel better about, the horrible ordeal that he went through that you're about to find out about. You're not doing this for like any kind of like personal gain for yourself other than for your job, which is for insurance purposes, which is the other side of the blade, which is very funny. Vague spoilers, but they're at the end of the game ends with this gigantic insurance report that you do covering all the damages done to the ship and all the people. And if you get everybody right, then all the people are given the appropriate justices done to them. The people who betray the ship are fined a little bit when their payout is being given. The people who stayed with the ship and were like very heroic in protecting other people are given bonuses. And there's a little bit of catharsis in that. But the irony, or like the dry humor of it, is that the catharsis is being done through insurance money, basically. Like instead of 50 pounds, this guy gets 60 pounds for being a hero. So it's like balancing the idea of remembering history for history's sake, like for personal history's sake through these books, and also like the stuff people remember history for practical reasons, like insurance, and the coldness of that, like of being kind of neutral, seeing all these people get murdered and kind of being neutral to all these murders, just filling them out like, okay, this damage was done to this ship, this damage was done to that part of the ship, stuff like that. Hopefully I'm making myself clear. I feel like I've been rambling the entire episode, but I feel like this has a good balance between interrogating the idea of doing menial jobs for menial job's sake, and also the personal effects that can come out of that in trying to see empathy through people, through the kind of like cold jobs you're being given, I guess. The jobs that you're given that lack emotional warmth. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't think it did, but any thoughts about that?
I think the narrative aspect to this game allows it to be a lot more pointed thematically than his other like more big idea games. I want to say like politics games, but if he's not saying they're political, then I guess I can't say that is his perspective. But his games where he's trying to present a specific idea or ideology and trying to show like, okay, this is what these sort of mechanics will uncover about the situation. Whereas this, it's like, okay, the narrative is uncovering the way that this situation is going, not the actual gameplay mechanics, which I think makes them a lot easier to understand and allows people to come away from the game in less varied ways, where basically everyone's going to sort of agree about what is actually happening within the game. And I think I didn't replay this for the podcast. I played this a few years ago, so this may be misremembering. But I think there's a major theme in this game about like the internal politics of the ship and how the lines are divided, how families are often used to stick together, and how you can be sort of blamed for the work of one of your family members, and also I want to say there is commentary on racism. I don't remember it well enough to say what it's saying, but
There
there are
is.
also often racial lines being drawn between the passengers, and I don't really remember what it's saying about that,
I
but it is
mean,
saying
to be
something.
honest, most of it is just like racism exists and people use racism to screw other people over, which,
Okay,
yeah, we get it. That's true. You got it
yeah,
right on that one, Lucas. Other half is that racial profiling is awesome and cool, something he definitely intended. um, yeah,
yeah.
I don't know about
I
that one,
mean,
Lucas.
the thing with like racial profiling is that the problems with it are like on the broader scale, and like if there's like I don't know, it is like hard to depict the problems with racial profiling as a policy in the game where you're entirely on one ship.
Yeah,
Um and like I guess the alternative is to in this situation is to have people have either A names that don't fit with their nationality or have like a completely ethno state ship where everyone's white or something. And like
yeah. I'm not
I guess
saying
this
there's
is
a
like
good
the
solution
best
to
way to do
this.
it.
This is not a criticism. Yeah, this is just
Yeah.
like really unfortunate. This is just how like how things were born to turn out. I guess I don't really think he has a personal message of this. He says this game was based on like a bunch of fantasies he had just like as a kid. I'm sure he was like really interested in nautical stuff as a kid, and he read a bunch of like swashbuckling stories, and this is like the culmination of all of them. He also dedicates this game to his dad, so maybe they had some kind of shared interest in that together. I don't know. I just think it's really nice. It's like one of the best, most well-designed detective games I've ever played. And if there's any message to be taken away from it, I guess the same way Papers, Please, he said the message was about how border issues are really complicated. I think this game is about how being in the past on a ship in Europe was really fucked up. I do think legitimately that's the biggest thing you could take away from this game.
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of like fantasy elements to this game that kind of like leads to a lot of the fucked up elements that kind of
Yeah.
makes that more difficult. So
It could also
I
be
don't
a
know.
game about how we like fantasize how fucked up things were for historical people back then. Just like the dramatic, horrible stuff that was happening to them back then. Stuff like that. This is like, what if everything that horrible that did happen to multiple ships happened to one ship? Basically, just like a 15 car pile up on one boat. I don't know. I think it's mainly for comedic purposes and for fun.
The way I understand this game thematically is kind of like how slasher movies are analyzed. It feels like very similar to me, whereas like the themes are more localized into the individual deaths of these characters. Like, okay, why did this character die? And once you figure out how that character dies, that will sort of inform your reading of the world. Like, okay, in a lot of slasher movies, if you are taking drugs or you're having a lot of sex, then you're going to probably die, and that's kind of making a moral statement about the world. Whereas in this game, if you like are kind of um like ignoring sicknesses, then that'll cause you to die. Or if there is like internal politics on the ship, then the death will inform like the understanding of that individual's action. So it's not saying like anything on the whole, but it is saying a lot of things on a smaller scale is my reading of this game.
No, I agree. I think there's a lot of stuff to be said, like with the individuals in part of. I think you can especially read a lot into the part where one of the characters who is spoilers, the artist voiced by Lucas Pope, the only character that Lucas Pope voices in the entire crew,
Interesting.
he dies by being squeezed by a tentacle, and he shits himself to death while groaning and dying, and nobody's there to see his death. I think you can read a lot into that.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's funny. I mean, that's kind of like the Tarantino Pulp Fiction thing where like people die if they go in the bathroom.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's the
Uh,
that's the message behind Pulp Fiction, and that's the message behind Return of the Obra Dinn. Let's move on,
yep, racism is cool in both of them. Let's move on.
and
So
don't use the
okay,
toilet.
he made a game with bad politics with Papers, Please. He made a game with bad politics, kind of, with Return of the Obra Dinn. But this time, Lucas was definitely not going to get it wrong. Okay, this time, his latest game, he made a game called Bars After Midnight, which is all about persecuting aliens. Let's get into it. This game he made for his kids. It's interesting because neither of us played this game. I'm pretty sure, right?
Nope,
I
I don't have a
didn't.
play date.
Yep, it was made for the Playdate, which is this extremely specific console that's being sold still, built maybe on indie developer games. I don't know how much money they had, but they got so many indie developers on board with it. They got Kid Takahashi, who made Katamari Damacy. They got Bennett Foddy, who made a game. So many people made a game for the Playdate. One of them was Lucas Pope. The thing about the Playdate is that it's 1 bit and it's kind of like a Game Boy Advance, but it has a crank on the side. And he decided to make this game specifically for his kids. So Mars After Midnight is a mainly family-friendly game without all the icky violence that plagues the Lucas Pope's earlier stuff. And it's kind of, I didn't play this game. I watched somebody play it, which is not the same thing, but I had enough of an impression to get like what he's doing. It's basically a take on Papers, Please that is very stripped down. You are an alien on Mars, on the off colony. I think it's the off colony town of Mars, and you host a community center for aliens that opens after midnight. The event changes every day, and you are supposed to let in the people who fit the meeting and people who don't fit the meeting. So, for example, the first day you do is an event for Cyclops anger management. So you're only supposed to let in Martians who have one eye and who look sad. If they look too happy, you cannot let them into the community center. So it's mainly a game about funny faces. Pope said he made the game because his kids like funny faces. So this is where the random generation thing comes back in. He used random generation to make the characters in Obra Dinn, their faces and like their facial features. He did it for the migrants in Papers, Please. And now he's doing it with all these goofy, like plastic, like faces and googly eyes and stuff like that on all these aliens, which vary every time you open the door to see who's behind and whether or not you let them in or not. I don't know. He has a lot of fun with this. I mean, there's a bunch of different days, there's a bunch of different themes. There's one called Farty Party where you're supposed to only let in people who fart. So you open the
Oh my
door
God.
and you see an alien and you have to wait like, I'm not kidding, like 5 seconds for each one to fart or not. And you close it. There's like an uncomfortably long pause before they fart. When they do it, it's like the wettest fart you've ever seen. There's one for like gnats holding knives. You buy a zoom lens basically at the window. You open it. There's like this extremely tiny speck that's like a gnat, and you have to zoom in and find a gnat and see if they're holding a knife. If they are, you can let them in. That kind of funny stuff. It's mainly made to like, make his kids laugh, I think. And it's a
Yeah,
pretty funny
Lucas
and
said that
charming
this
game.
is his most political game, and he's trying to be political as a direct analog to politics in Indonesia. So that's really the really interesting thing about this one.
He did it. Finally, after all this time, he made a game about politics. He did it.
Yeah,
It took him
no
all so
games were
long.
political before, but this one was.
True.
And the funny
Yeah,
faces, we can get to LCD, please, which seems to be the main mechanic of the game.
right.
This is basically a remake of Papers, Please, but it's a demake. It's going back to LCD games, like the Game & Watch or like calculators, where you can see the places where the image can go on the screen, and they're either going to be on or off. And that composition, in this case, will create faces, a lot of randomly generated faces from these pre-drawn parts of the face. And in doing this, it is creating a kind of remake of Papers, Please, stripped down of everything that Lucas Pope doesn't care about for this game. And it turns it into a kind of straightforward matching game where it's like, okay, is this face the same as the face that you were presented earlier? And if it's yes, you can let them in. And if it's not, you deny them. And you want to get a good high score for that. There are other smaller mechanics, like countries that you need to be kicking out and criminals that you need to be kicking out. But other than that, it's a very straightforward adaptation. And this one felt kind of weird to me because it kind of like reveals how the important part of Papers, Please is not the outside stuff. It's just the core mechanic
Yeah.
of recognition.
When stripped down, Papers, Please is not the empathy. It's just accept, deny. That's it.
Like, is it the same? It's a matching game when you come down to it. And like, I don't know. I think that this game informs Papers, Please a lot more than this game is saying by itself, by kind of showing like what is actually important in Papers, Please.
Yeah. I mean, this game was never meant to be appreciated by itself. It was made for the 10th anniversary of Papers, Please, so it obviously invites comparison. I mean, I think this gets down to what Lucas is interested in, which is technical restraints for himself. He likes technical restraints, he likes puzzles, stuff like that. I feel like he made this game as a challenge to be like, I mean, he restricted graphics previously with 1-bit graphics in Return of the Obra Dinn. He's restricting graphics by doing all these like random face generation stuff, and he's like, how much can I get away with if I just give myself this palette to work with, this LCD screen where you can only highlight or not highlight these lines. His wife Keiko did some of the art for it, and with that art palette he basically set on basically making a game where the passengers look close enough to people that you could play it. I think that was the challenge for him. It was mainly done for himself and to celebrate the game.
Yeah. And I think the fact that this is sort of um not actually emulating, but it is representing an LCD game system is kind of fascinating. Like you're using a mouse to click on the buttons that you would find on an LCD game. And that feels like kind of, I don't know, meta in a way of his user interface ideas. Like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a game where you press the buttons, but you press the buttons by using a mouse, and it feels like you're playing the game in a way you're not supposed to be playing it, even though like you're like this is obviously not a real LCD game. And this is the way you are meant to play it, but it feels wrong in some way. Like you are missing part of the experience by doing this on your computer with a mouse. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I thought that was interesting too. He would also do this kind of interest in LCD games with another game, Wooded Mansion. You want to talk about that one?
Yes, Moita Mansion is like a. I want to compare this a lot to Maniac Mansion. It's, kind of like a point and click adventure game with only two buttons, and you are basically playing as someone who is inside this big haunted mansion, and there's a monster following you around, which is basically just like a black stick figure who's following you around, and you need to be finding all these other kids that are hidden somewhere in the mansion, and you gotta be letting them out from their hiding spaces and sort of getting everyone outside of the mansion. And you do this by sort of hovering other objects and selecting them through their buttons, and it'll like sort of select through everything like a scrolling wheel, I guess, instead of pointing and clicking. There's just like some kind of straightforward puzzles. I guess I'm
Not
spoiling
really
this, but
puzzles, yeah.
like there are buttons you need to press, and when you press them, it'll do something. And there are keys you need to get that'll open the like dressers and things that you need to open. To me, it kind of he seems to like actually like these LCD games, but my experience of playing this was like it felt to me the implied author was going, man, what if LCD games didn't suck? What if they were like actually good and ambitious and things while still adhering to these technical restraints?
Yeah, kind of. I do think this game
Like
has some kind of contempt for like Tiger Electronics games.
like I think that not, like that's very clearly not what Pope is trying to say, but it's what it feels like if you're
No, I
making like such
agree.
a high quality game within the LCD game space where those games were very simple. Like a lot of them were understandably simple, like on the Gaming Watch, whereas like very simple. Like how can we strip this down as much as we can to make something fun? And then like into the 2000s, like okay, let's put this into the Happy Meal. What kind of what's
Yeah.
the cheapest shit that we can put in this thing? But yeah, there's like an appreciation and there's like an artistry to LCD games that I hadn't really thought about until I played these games, which is nice in a way. But at the same time, I can't say that like I would play this game in my free time if I wasn't like interested in Pope as a figure.
I agree. Yeah. I don't think this game is that good. I mean, this is weird because it fits within this kind of midway point where it's like, it's making fun of Tiger Electronics games in a way where it's like, wouldn't it be cool if they actually did this? Like they did something different with artistic direction. But on the other hand, I don't think Pope is actually interested in the gameplay of this. I think he just wanted to do an artistic experiment with this game, which is how can you make a game where there are multiple rooms, but you only have one canvas of LCD stuff? In a way, it kind of reminds me. The reason I wanted to bring this up for some reason was because I was thinking of Metal Slater Glory, that scene where you're traversing in first person throughout all the different the abandoned laboratory or whatever. It's using that game uses the same pixels and like very limited animation in order to convey to you that you're traversing multiple rooms and stuff like that. And this game is doing the same thing by traversing multiple rooms with just the LCD screen and what appears in that screen to signify to you that there are different rooms. I just thought that was similar. I thought that was fun.
I think it's a very effective illusion. Like I was surprised by how well it works. Because like there's the fade in, fade out effect with the
Hmm.
LCD screen, whereas like from left to right, it'll just like take everything off the screen for a second and then reload the next screen in a way that like feels very classical editing, I guess. And yeah, I'm surprised by how well this game worked. Like it feels very experimental, and like seeing how far you can go with this design restriction. But yeah, that's about as far as I can get with it.
Yep. And is that it? Did we do all those games?
Yeah, I think those are all his games. I think that we talked enough about them. I don't think I have a conclusion here.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it seems like Lucas Pope also doesn't have a conclusion. He hasn't really talked about what game he's making next. He wasn't like, he made Papers, Please on a whim. He did Return of the Obra Dinn also on a whim. He was just like, let's just see where I go with this. So it's not like he has like a career trajectory or anything that he has planned for himself.
Yeah,
He's
much
just
like
doing
Lucas Pope's
whatever.
games, we are ending this episode telling you all the mechanics and kind of leaving it up to you to decide what it's about. All right, where are we doing next episode? Oh no,
All right.
recommendations. We got to do recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so what do you recommend?
I recommend Papers, Please, Return of the Obra Dinn. If you're going to play one game, just do Return of the Obra Dinn. I also recommend Unsolicited for people who like Papers, Please and want a little bit more of it because I think it's interesting as a text. And also F.D.N.Y. Firefighter American Hero, the 9/11 Firefighter game. Because, again, I can't emphasize, I mean, I'm not going to say it's like an amazing game, but I legitimately had fun with it. I thought it was a fun game, and there should be more Firefighter games. He should make a new Firefighter game. That's it. That's the next step for it. Go back to it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to recommend Return of the Obra Dinn too because it's like one of the greatest mystery games ever. And I'm also going to recommend Mightier. I don't know why, but I really enjoyed that game, and I kind of want to go back and play it. Talking about it, like I don't know, it's like such a very simple mechanic, but I got so much out of it, and it really made me think abstractly about like maps in a 3-dimensional space. It's like this is a different way of thinking about the world. And also, Return of the Obra Dinn is just good ass mystery game.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those games, I'm sure a lot of people have said this, but like many games now have been like citing Obra Dinn as like a direct influence and like ripping it off directly. And I'm like, good. There should be more games like this.
Yeah.
It's too good to just be left to one game. Yeah. The mechanic.
I've heard the Case of the Golden Idol is like very much in debt to Return of the Obra Dinn, and people are like nuts for that game as well. I need to play it at some point.
I finished it. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
um,
interesting.
I mean, I should have brought this up earlier, but Return of the Obra Dinn is definitely only a game that a guy who started his career making 3D models could have made. Like, it's only a game that somebody who started off doing texturing and all that stuff for like years could have made. Because while there are so many Obra Dinn like copycats, nobody has ever tried to do, as far as I could tell, like a remake of the 3D models and stuff
Right.
like that. Anything nearly as ambitious as he did.
It is still so unique aesthetically that it just stands out so much. Also, I want to recommend Moita Mansion. If you're interested in LCD games, then I think that is something that you should really check out because the design and the aesthetic are so unique compared to anything else we'll see in the last like 10 years since LCD games just kind of disappeared that it's kind of worth looking at.
Oh, also, now that I mention it, about 2 weeks ago, he came out with a new video for the anniversary of the Return to the Obra Dinn, which is a time lapse of him making the models for all the characters and all the ships, and he narrates it over like a movie commentary for like 2.5 hours. It's very fascinating to watch because he's just talking about his process and what he's interested in. He seriously spends like 2 years working on that ship without knowing what it's going to be used for. He hasn't even finished the murder up to that point. He's just making the ship by himself. It's crazy. I don't know. The work ethic is crazy. And is that it?
Yeah. All right. So this is my suggestion, which might surprise you given how negative I've been in this episode. I really thought I was going to like Papers, Please. I don't think I mentioned that, but I thought I was going to like it, and I ended up not. Anyway, yeah, Galvin, what is your next choice?
Maybe one day you'll be able to play the game with the right politics for you. You know, like the most alt-right. You know, you've been looking for the really alt-right stuff, right? The hard-hitting stuff.
Oh yeah. That's me. That's what I enjoy.
Okay. I've been kind of disappointed in myself because when I originally started this podcast with Offer Function, I was like, you know, it'd be really good to do for this podcast itch.io people. And it's our 11th or like 12th episode. We have not done any itch.io people.
Are you not counting like Sylvie?
Oh, I guess Sylvie, yeah. But Sylvie was active before itch.io popped up. It's just that she started moving
Okay.
on to doing that stuff. I'm going to be talking about a person I think most people discovered through itch.io and I mean, they have games on Steam and other platforms, but I think they mostly got popular through itch.io. At least that's how I discovered them. I'm talking about NPC Casey. NPC Casey is an interesting person I don't know much about. Born in Hong Kong, grew up in Canada, now living in Japan. They write a lot of visual novels. I think for their job, they do translation work, Japanese to English, for a lot of games. They are also making they've also made like 50 visual novels, small visual novels just on their own. And a lot of them are about like gender issues, and a lot of them are about like how to fit in as an Asian person within countries that don't necessarily accept that kind of thing. Other stuff are just like playing on tropes and are just like a lot of fun. A lot of people say these games are like cute and wholesome, and part of me wants to use a description, but I feel like people have been using that term for evil, especially if in the past few years. So I will not do that. I've played only a few of their games, but I'm interested in doing a deep dive and seeing what else I can be able to pull up, because I don't know. I've just been looking at their games for a long time now without playing them. What
And
do
I've
you see
never heard
offer?
of this person, so I have no opinion until I play them. But yeah, more visual novels. Here we come.
Yep. And I guess that's all. I mean, I don't have much to say about them because we haven't played their games yet. So I guess that's it. I'm
Cool. End of
Galvin.
episode. Yay, we did it.
I'm Galvin.
And I'm Author Function.
Thanks for listening.
Yay!
You always
Now we
forget to
ended
do
the
that
episode.
part. You always
We
forget
don't
to
need
do
it.
that part.
It's fine. The episode can
You're
just
just going
end.
to end the episode? That's so awkward.
Yeah, end of episode. Bye.